Charlotte Observer. Jim Utter joins us. And Jim, welcome to the show again. How have you been?
Good. How are you guys?
Hey, we are terrific. I saw that you wrote here about Clint Bowyer poised for a championship push. Interestingly enough, we had Brett Griffin on the show last week, and he was really geeked about the chances that that Bowyer team had, and obviously came to fruition. This is a team that I think a lot of people kind of just really didn't take maybe seriously earlier in the year, but have come on gangbusters here when it counted.
Well, I mean, I think from the get-go this season, Michael Waltrip Racing has shown that they have been consistently fast. And for a while, there was a question of whether they could turn that into wins. And then Clint won at Sonoma, California, and then he won again at Richmond. And I think he entered the chase as much as on a high as anyone. I mean, that was the race right before the start of the chase. And those guys have got, I think, the fuel strategies working just as well as Brad Kozlowski and crew chief Paul Wolf. So I don't see, I mean, to me, it's not really too much of a surprise. I think it may be a little bit of a surprise that he won at Charlotte because it's typically not been a good track for Clint. But I think that right now, with 5 races left, it's a 4-man race, and Clint Bowyer is one of them.
We got lots of stuff to cover here, Jim, tonight. One of the things Charlie and I talked about, of course, is the concussion to Dale Earnhardt Jr. Out for 2 races is kind of what the initial diagnosis, for lack of a better term, was, I guess. Do you see any possibility that that could be extended past last race and this race at Kansas?
Well, you know, they said at least 2 races. I read something today where Dale Jr. was visiting a concussion specialist in Pittsburgh today. So, you know, if he gets a different answer or gets some more information, I think it's entirely possible that he may be out longer than just last week and this week. And the big question is, you know, and this discussion came up last week after Dale Jr. talked about it, you know, we really don't know unless people come forward whether they tell us, whether we know their complete concussion history. So, you know, Dale Jr. talked about the race at Talladega and the tire test incident at Kansas this year, but I know that he has had concussion incidents in the past. And I mean, I'm talking about previously in his career.
Right.
So, you know, what you hear nowadays from like the NFL is, you know, when these things happen over the course of someone's career, the more times they happen, the more likely there is for long-term effects. And that, I think that's kind of like the information that Dale Jr. is kind of gathering right now. I don't think we've heard the final decision yet. I think we will soon, but it would not surprise me if he sat out longer.
Hey, Jim, we're talking to Jim Utter from the Charlotte Observer and That'sRacing.com. Jim, I don't want to spend much more time on this concussion thing, but is there any talk at all from NASCAR, from officials, about having an official policy on how to handle concussions going forward? I mean, the NFL's policy is really etched in stone now and very strict. Any feeling that NASCAR might go that way eventually?
There's been some talk. I think, though, that the problem is, and this was brought up by Dr. Jerry Petty here at Charlotte, is that 90% of concussions are diagnosed by the patient telling you symptoms that they're suffering from. So, first of all, you've got to have athletes that are upfront about everything that they are experiencing. There are some tests that they can run, but as Dr. Petty said, if you take a MRI or a CAT scan and it shows something, you're already well past the concussion stage.
Right.
You're to the hemorrhage or brain damage stage. So there are some things. I know the NFL uses the impact test, which is kind of a diagnostic tool, which is also what Dale Jr. undertook last week. they can probably mandate that test be given in certain circumstances. But the bottom line here is you're going to have some cooperation from the athletes themselves.
We're talking with Jim Utter from the Charlotte Observer. Next topic is $2.4 billion that Fox is paying for TV rights going forward. Does it have an effect on the way we are going to see, to what we see, what the fan sees at home, in your mind?
I think it's going to have, whether what you see on the screen is different remains to be seen. I think it will have a change in access to what you see. One of the reasons why there was an increase, one of the reasons that NASCAR was able to get an increase is that for the first time it's been able to sell the digital rights to the broadcast, because previously Turner had held them and they weren't able to do anything with them. Well, now that Fox has purchased its own digital rights to their broadcast, I think Fox itself will be offering different ways that people can tune into the broadcast, not just through television and maybe some online streaming, maybe through your mobile apps, such as that, things of that nature, things that you can't get right now. But on the other side, there's also going to be at least some change in where you find the broadcast. It appears at least a few of the Cup races will migrate over to the new Fox Sports 1 channel, which will be a rebranded speed channel dedicated to coverage of all sports, not just NASCAR.
Okay, the next big topic here is we're rolling through them, Jim, as fast as we can here. Qualifying format official as of today is going to be changed to a 36-6-1. I don't see that that's going to make a huge difference in who necessarily will make most of these races. Maybe at Daytona it will, but overall, do you see a big difference in the way that it's going to be as opposed to the way it was?
I don't think a practical effect. I don't think there'll be a big change on who's in the race and who isn't. I think just in general, I think you're better off going with the idea of, in most cases, the fastest cars get in the race, and then the others. You might get to a point where teams will use up provisionals, and then they'll be, on their own to get in the race, and that could certainly happen. But I have no problem with it. I never really thought it was a necessity when they first implemented it. The other thing that I think actually I applaud NASCAR for is reducing the size of the nationwide fields to 40 cars. This is the easiest and most practical way NASCAR can help reduce the start and park problem, is simply by removing spaces in the field, which get taken up by them. And it's not going to reduce any competition. The Truck Series, for instance, uses a 36 truck field, and it makes no difference to the level of competition you see in the races. So I think that was a good step in their part to help realize that there's a large group of cars every week in the Nationwide Series that are simply starting to pick up a paycheck and leave. And this will help reduce that number.
Well, last week James Finch came out and said that he thought it would be a good idea if NASCAR restructured the purse structure of the races, take some of that money that the start and parkers were getting and move it up the group. And in essence, they did that, at least in the Nationwide Series. I don't see them necessarily doing that, cutting the amount of cars in the Cup Series, but do you foresee that there could be a change in the way the pay structure is in the Cup Series for the bottom group?
I don't think it's going to change too much as far as how the money is divvied up. However, I think that this opens the door for a similar move in Cup if, like, for instance, next year or the year after, we start to see a growing number of start and parks in the Cup Series, and you start to get like 7, 8 cars pulling off like you do right now in Nationwide. I certainly think that they have opened the door to saying you know what? If we find that if this becomes a problem in Cup and starts manifesting itself, there's no reason why you can't do the same thing. This whole 43 car thing is not etched in stone anywhere. It's just a number NASCAR settled on many years ago, and it can certainly change. And I think I personally would rather have a field of 30 competitive cars than a 43-car field and having 13 of them basically being roadblocks.
Yep. All right. Jim, as always, we appreciate you spending some time with us. Have fun as the season wears down, and we'll talk to you again.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Jim. Jim Utter from the Charlotte Observer and that'sracing.com, one of the best in the business.